Welcome back, everybody, to Goodwill Podcasting with Connor, Dan, and Stone. Your movie podcast that today is talking about the men, women, whoever who has served our country over the last hundreds and hundreds of years for us. And we're doing a Veterans Day special with Veterans Day tomorrow with our own veteran we have here, Connor. And we have a guest on today as well, Jimmy with Movie Death Blows. First time guest, we always love that. You're a friend of Dan's in Philadelphia. Which is super cool. I don't know if we've ever had a guest on that we've actually met in person, the three of us. I don't believe so. So we appreciate you being here with us. Please tell everyone about you, where to find you, anything you want, my man.
Sure. Thanks for having me on, guys. But yes, I have unfortunately met Dan in person. My name is James. My name is James Masalam. You guys can call me Jimmy. I run Movie Death Blows. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook. I still call it Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, all that stuff under Movie Death Blows or Movie Death Blow because I had a delete account back in the day, and then I got it back. But yeah, I do all things movie, TV, entertainment related stuff.
What's the Facebook space like right now? I was there for a second when I started, and it was wild. Like,
considering I've been doing this almost 10 years on there, I randomly have like the last 4 years, I went from like 3,000 followers to 13,000 followers, but it's the hardest to gain traction on because it's the hardest to get people to see your stuff with all the crap that is on there at that point. But yeah. It's starting. They're starting to pay out a little bit. Like I think I get like $50 a month from some there or something like that. But it all depends on what you're posting and everything.
Yeah.
You know what I thought about? A lot of times on Facebook, I see that those fake trailers, for like Fast and Furious 12, like the AI generated images and thumbnails and stuff like that.
Back to the Future 4.
Right. I thought about this. I wonder if like studios ever look like on Facebook at those and see which ones have the most traction to see like what people might be excited about to possibly see in the future. That might be a good tactic to look at.
I think you're really overestimating how much studios give a shit about our opinion.
Well, it depends. Because if you post something that they don't like, they'll know. Trust me.
Well, yeah.
Is this your J-Lo friend, Dan?
No.
Is James? Oh, okay. James,
I was also wondering that.
No.
I don't think so.
James, yeah, I'll say Dan has a friend that J-Lo just does not like for some because he didn't like her documentary.
Yeah, he made a video bashing her. What was that thing called? The like 90-minute long music video movie she made?
I don't know.
But she sued a bunch of people and tried to sue him, and like she's really crazy. But
like when you're that famous, does it matter if someone doesn't like something you put out?
If you're really insecure, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair.
Was it J-Lo self-made or something like that?
It's so bizarre. I watched like a half hour of it. It's really odd.
I don't just speak. I know we just had the election, but there's like tons of people like talking about like the celebrity endorsements and stuff like that. I even sent a message to Dan, but someone said that they stopped paying attention to them once J-Lo like stood up and said who she was voting for because they don't necessarily apply to like normal people's lives because they said that she hadn't driven a car in like 30 years. So it's like we're not really on the same playing field, like same concerns kind of a thing.
I don't really see how celebrity endorsements help either party. Like you have like Hulk Hogan, who's like a horrible person, and like Brett Favre, who stole from a welfare fund, coming out endorsing Trump. And then you have like J-Lo, like people like J-Lo, like on the other side, just like they're all so detached and just nobody's changing their opinion of who they're voting on based off that. So it seems like an outdated process. I don't know.
I mean, politics is the closest thing to professional wrestling you'll ever see. Like when the cameras are on, these people hate each other. But behind the scenes, like when you work on the Hill and everything like that, they're all friends, save for like 3 of them. Like everybody hates Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, and Mike Lee. They hope those guys get hit by a bus, but everybody else is mostly friends. And they'll tell you that to their face. Like if something happened to Ted Cruz, they would stand up and applaud. But most of the time, they're friends off camera.
Yep. I was just talking about this literally last night about how at the end of the day, like, as long as we're arguing with each other, one side is going to benefit in the end. And, like, it just goes cyclically over and over again. And, like, it swings back and forth. But if we're just fighting, we don't actually focus on, like, things actually changing. I think exactly what you're saying. A lot of people don't realize, like, all these people know each other and are connected. And it's just it's the same shit to an extent.
Acting by lobbying firms and stuff like that. They all know each other at some point.
Yeah.
It's all an act. Mostly.
Speaking of our country, Connor, you have served our country, which is, one of the main reasons why we're doing this episode. It's one we've been wanting to do for a while, just to honor you and honor everybody else who has sacrificed their time and their lives to do this. I don't know if there's anything you want to say about your experiences with it. I know you were a Marine, and I'm sure there's a lot of stories there and maybe things you want to talk about. Watching Full Metal Jacket, I was like, did you go through that? like how was it? But I don't know if you want to say anything, or I know you've probably been anticipating this episode a little bit.
Yeah, we can dive into it a little more when we get to Full Metal Jacket. But this is coming out on Monday the 11th, which is Veterans Day. We're recording on November 10th, which is the greatest holiday of the year, the Marine Corps birthday.
Oh.
Born in Tun Tavern, Philadelphia, 1775. So literally we were born in a bar. Yeah. And I still want to go visit.
Drinking to celebrate?
I will be right when we get off this episode.
Nice. Is that what like Marines do? Like is that like like tradition?
So
okay.
Every year every unit puts on their own Marine Corps ball. And the best way I've been able to describe it is it's a little bit of a classier prom with a steak dinner, and drinking is encouraged. I mean, I was 19, and you can get in serious trouble in the military for drinking underage. We all do it. But like my CO was coming up and just handing me a flask to chug. It was the greatest experience ever.
And you saw for how long did you serve?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. And
yeah,
you
I was
never saw
actually
any
medically
active.
separated.
Okay, medically separate. You never saw active duty or anything like that?
No, I was begging to deploy, and I was the only one in my shop that didn't because my staff sergeant hated me.
Yeah.
I don't know how long my father my father was in the Army. I don't know how long he served, but I know he was a paratrooper. People find that pretty cool. I mean, he jumped out of plane. I'm glad he never saw combat, but it would have been a little cool if he did. I mean, I don't know. Do you like, as a Marine, do you hope you never get to see combat? Like, I wonder, like, how does that like work? Like, I guess, you're putting life on the line, but also you're training for potential. I don't know. I just don't know the mindset of, being put in that situation.
It really depends Marine to Marine, but I think there's a few different ways to look at it. Like me, I always wanted to deploy. It didn't matter where. And like, we're kind of just trained to be ready to go anywhere. But my job, I wouldn't have really deployed anywhere that dangerous. Like my unit deployed to Spain, Italy, or Germany. So it's really just a vacation. Yeah. Like, and it's less work when you're on deployment too, from what I've heard, because like I was in North Carolina, when we were there, we had, I think it was 12 different aircraft to work on. And when you're deployed, you have 2. So it was a lot less work. So you really we're just kind of enjoying your time depending on your job over there.
So I was curious, did you hear any story about people finding anything while they're deployed? I was just thinking about Kelly's Hero. Like that'd be I guess that would be a reason to go over there, kind of just like explore and stuff like that.
Nothing to that extent.
But we can, I was saying,
yeah,
go ahead,
dive into it.
Yeah. I didn't know what this is about. This is Dan's recommendation. I'd heard of Kelly's Heroes. Dan, I don't know if you want to describe what this movie is about and like the plot of it and everything. Is it based? I looked it up while I was searching it. It's based loosely on a true story. I don't know how true or like what parts of it are true at all.
Yeah. So basically, this is a movie from 1970 about a group of GIs that, essentially led by Clint Eastwood, find out about this huge huge amount of gold bars that the Germans have that they're safeguarding. And they basically he puts together a small team to basically say, screw the war, and we're going to go do something for ourselves. And they go try to find this gold. But as they do that, it's also kind of like unintentionally inspiring to the rest of the army and some of the officers to like keep pushing forward with them. I think this movie is really, really funny. I've always enjoyed this. It's generally regarded as like a top 30, 50 war movie of all time. I think you know, it's definitely kind of a tongue-in-cheek, funny movie, but I think a lot of the action itself is actually pretty solid. There's some really well-shot sequences. I think all around it's just a very, very solid movie, but one that maybe some people haven't seen. So I thought it would be something a little different for today. But I think, Jimmy, you're the only one that has seen this before.
I used to watch it with my dad. We used to watch all of those kind of war movies and stuff like that from when he was younger. I mean, he's born in the 50s, but like for my money, Donald Sutherland's the best part of this movie is Oddball, just because he's so funny.
I was going to say
driving the
that
tank
too.
and everything like that. But like also like in a movie with Don Rickles, you don't expect Sutherland to be the funniest part of the whole thing, but he just looks ridiculous through the whole thing, so that's what makes it funny. Like if Clint Eastwood's in this movie and Rickles is in this movie, but if you go back and watch like the AFI like date or like tribute to Eastwood, Rickles just making fun of him the whole time. He's like, I haven't seen you since Kelly's Heroes, but we did this one movie together. We're never going to talk again.
What was your how did you view this maybe when you were younger, like watching with your dad, and like how do you view it now? Like has that changed or is it pretty much the same? Or
when you're young, when I was younger, I was like, is this what they did in World War II? Like they were just doing like weird because like the movies took a weird change from World War II. Like right after it was all like trying to document kind of what happened with like Tora and stuff of that nature. But then like when you got to the 70s and the 80s, it kind of got comical and satirical, whatever that word is. Like when you get but like they started doing like weird stuff with it and like going off on crazy stories. And the guy that actually directed Kelly's Heroes is Brian Hutton, but he directed another World War II movie called Where Eagles Dare with Clint Eastwood and Richard Burton, and it's kind of in that same like crazy like spy twist, but like it's more serious than Kelly's Heroes, but it's got like crazy twists to it all the time, which is something that just happened with those movies back then. There were all kinds of crazy stories that were classified were coming out and everything like that.
So yeah, I really enjoyed this a lot. It was a lot more comical than I was expecting. Like you said, Dan, that's kind of like maybe your main takeaway from this film. There is some death in it, and that's kind of there are some serious moments, and it's kind of because it is so funny. It's kind of hard for me to take those moments seriously. But I will say my favorite part of the movie is like the general who's thinking like these guys are taking charge and they're really like pushing the line. He's like so loud and boisterous, and he's like, come on, you all should be doing that, let's go. It's like that was really good. And I like their captain, I believe, is the one who's like taking the yacht and randomly selling the yacht, and he's like, I'll be gone for 3 days, guys, bye. that was all really good for me.
I think this movie is funny, and I also think it's a solid war movie, but it does have something to say in terms of just I think kind of making a mockery of leadership, whether it be the captain or the general, like, and how I think the average guy kind of could get forgotten, and they were the ones actually suffering. And I feel like it is an interesting story of them, Kelly really just saying, I'm kind of tired of this shit. And like, you see what his leadership is like, and he's saying, we've given so much to the war and to the army, like, let's actually just do something for ourselves. And it's interesting because it's not like a war where, it wasn't important or they weren't doing something important, but just seeing them kind of make that decision. But also, I do think it's very critical of a lot of the officers and the leadership. And I think that's kind of funny, but specifically General Colt and the captain as well.
When you guys watched this to get ready, did yours pop up with like a PSA before you watched it, basically explaining what this story was about and that it was satirical?
What did you watch it on? No, I just
Apple TV.
I rented it. Did you rent it?
I rented it on Apple TV, and it popped up with like this 5-minute long synopsis, and then just like, this isn't meant to be taken seriously. It was the wildest thing. I've never seen it for a movie before.
I rented it from Prime. It didn't have that, but
I was supposed to pay attention.
So, yeah, I have the DVD. I didn't see it. But like one thing I always forget is that General Colt is played by Carol O'Connor, who played Archie Bunker on All in the Family, and that always throws me off when I watch it.
Yeah,
because I'm just not. I'm expecting him to be one guy, and then he's not. But kind of the same way.
It's funny because I think this is the worst movie we're talking about today, and I have it at a 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah, I don't agree with that, but
I don't either. Yeah, but
I think generally most people would like that. I think I would definitely say that.
I mean, I enjoyed every bit of this movie. I'm with Stone though. I think the part that kind of takes me out a little bit is I don't think the serious and the comedy is balanced as well. Like the minefield scene when like someone actually does die, like I I don't know, it just didn't seem to have the same effect as maybe like Full Metal Jacket when one of those guys die, which obviously that's a much more heavy, much more serious movie. But I just don't think it was balanced as well.
See, I think I always kind of looked at this as with the humor, like I feel like a lot of that just kind of comes out of their like camaraderie, and you get a sense of like their closeness. So when the humor is coming from how close they are and just like caring about each other, I actually think some of the more serious sequences in this are really well done. Like that whole minefield sequence, I think it builds tension really well. It's a long scene from them, the first guy stepping on the mine, to them working their way through it, to the convoy pulling up, to some of them getting through, to them setting up. Like I think it's pretty well done. And another sequence I think is really good is towards the end where they're coming into the town and the Tigers are like cycling their engines. I just think this movie builds tension really nicely in a few different points, and it sets up some pretty good action. But I do see what you guys, I do see your point of view. I also just think this feels like very authentic. I mean, they shot this in Yugoslavia because they wanted to get real Shermans, which Yugoslavia had a shitload of. They had old Russian.
Dude, that guy at the end looks so German.
They had
he also looked like he had a lot of Botox, but this is way back in the day, so I don't think he did. But he was like, he had a full face.
Yeah, they had old Russian T-34s that they used for the Tigers, but it all looks great, and I feel like they put a lot of effort into making it authentic, which is cool.
One thing about like the serious elements, I wish they would have dived into more, and I think it would have added a lot to this movie. But it's more of like, I guess they don't even like reflect on it. It's the fact of Clint Eastwood's character's backstory is that he got like a lot of his men killed, and that he was demoted, and they mentioned that at the beginning, but that's never addressed again.
You want to know why? They cut it out of the fucking movie. They cut like a half hour out of this movie, and Clint Eastwood was pissed. And part of it was literally a scene explaining exactly what you're talking about. And it was Kelly and Big Joe basically explaining what had happened and how he was like scapegoated. And it leads you into understanding his disillusionment with the war, which I think would have made the movie. It's already kind of long. It's like 2:20.
It is pretty long, yeah.
There was a bunch of stuff that got cut, so
I would have just loved to see him like reflect on like what he's doing and how like it's kind of changing him because of what happened in the past. And also an element that I wish would have, I mean, it's kind of like you're talking about the undertones of like the leadership and everything like that, like what they're trying to really speak about. A lot of this to me was talking about miscommunication that happened in the war.
Chaos.
Yeah, there's a lot of like they're bombing us and that's our guy, and even Clint Eastwood's guys weren't his fault. Like he was given the wrong information, and that's why he went and killed friendly fire there too. There's a whole lot of that here.
Yeah, and even them talking about like if we go do this, is anyone even going to notice we're gone? Like it's just you get a sense it's complete chaos.
Isn't Sutherland's character like just been hanging out for a while?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that's his entire backstory.
He's like, yeah, we act like we don't know what's going on and we need to rest, so they just don't bother us.
Yeah,
It's odd to think a movie from 1970 has over 25 minutes of deleted scenes in it, but this one, like what Dan was saying, it does. And like you can find them, like if you have the DVD, they're on there for like the latest release. But that just blew my mind, the fact that like they just have half hour of deleted scenes sitting there that you can actually watch, and they're not even restored. It's just from there they didn't put in there.
Also, it seems like a pretty important part of the story.
Yeah. I also just think like Oddball is literally one of my favorite movie characters of all time. And I think he with Clint Eastwood as a straight man, it's really funny because he's always just kind of like grimacing at him and making that face he does, like what the fuck is this guy talking about? But I feel like they mesh together really well. But I also think it shows you really well how like I mean, like the military is all different personalities, people from all walks of life, and people have to come together, and figure it out and work together. I think that's, the military at its best, or World War II at its best. I think that's interesting. So I think it works.
I love that he doesn't know how to fix the tanks, right? I just ride them, baby. and then doesn't he use his gold at the end to buy the tiger tank that was like just like messed up?
Yeah.
And then they're dressed in like German uniforms, right? He's dressed in a German uniform at the end. He's just like winging it.
I think he has the coat on. I think he's
yeah. And he's a tiger tank, so I feel like there could be a danger of friendly fire there, or like someone like attacking you, but he doesn't care.
I think the movie also has pretty, like, for what it is, it does a pretty good job explaining tank warfare in World War II and explaining like the disadvantage we were at, but also the advantages that Sherman's had, especially in cities and like urban areas. Like the tank combat's pretty good, and I think helps people understand that we were at a massive disadvantage, and the US's idea was we'll just make so many Shermans that we can throw 5 Shermans at a German tank and 4 of them might be destroyed, but 1 will finish the job. So it was tough.
Also, was another deleted scene when they were about like the fight, like before they built the bridge, or like when they got separated from those guys who were going to build the bridge? Because it like cut and like the battle was like already almost over. And then they left those guys that they recruited they recruited those guys because they're like, what, we're just going to go full on, have a huge force. So they basically had an army, which is why they recruited them. And then it helped them win that little battle over the water. And then they're like, see you later. And they just like peeled off because the guys that they recruited couldn't get all of their men across.
Yeah. I think they just had to kind of keep moving there.
Okay. I feel like, like I said, I feel like maybe that could have been extended a little bit because it was kind of just at the tail end. But they have enough like battle sequences. I hate saying that in a war film, but that's just part of it. But good movie, Dan. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of like Jimmy said, I grew up watching this. My parents love this movie, so I've talked about it before on like TikTok and stuff. I hope I would love some more people to watch it, but it's I don't think it'll ever be that popular.
It reminded me of that movie, which I know was not greatly reviewed, The Monuments Men, the one that they try to steal the paintings. Like, didn't Hitler stole paintings and they're trying to steal them back or something like that?
They were trying to destroy them and they were trying to preserve them, I think is
there it is. Okay.
But, like, they just want to make sure, like, in the bombings and stuff that happened, that all this like historical art survived. But I remember very vague. I watched it. I don't remember anything from the movie.
I know Damon's in it, and Clooney. No, Clooney. I don't know.
Clooney.
Some of those guys.
Clooney and Damon are both are.
Yeah.
Bill Murray too. Put all the pieces together. Connor, what did you rate this? So you said you had it 3.5.
Yeah.
I got it at 4. I think good solid 4.
I think I have it at like a 4.5. I want to say. I have to check though.
Probably about a 4 for me.
A 4. Nice.
For nostalgia reasons.
Yeah, I would say you both got nostalgia going. I mean, I loved it. I'll say that, but then also, I'm like, I wish I would have watched that with my dad. It's kind of the thoughts that I had after I watched it. Like growing up, I wish I watched that with my father.
Did you also notice it has?
Go ahead, Connor.
The story is driven by the exact same thing as The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Like a MacGuffin, that just keeps you. It's gold wealth. That's all people want.
They're just fighting for gold towards the end. There's a bridge that gets blown up.
We didn't talk about it too, but I think this is also like really well shot, and there's some moments that like are really cool. Like,
I like the tank getting stuck. I like the tank stuck, and like he can't like the paint on the back of the tank, and then also that made me thinking because you were talking about tank mechanics. I was like, how strong are those little like I guess mechanics that like turn the turret? Yeah, I was like, can it not like just like clothesline a tree?
Yeah, no. They wouldn't be able to like move that quickly. But the one shot I was thinking of was when they're in the bell tower and they're setting up to ring the bell. The shot like down the tower.
Oh, I thought that. Yeah,
hands like zooms in. I'm like, this is really cool.
They do a lot of those. Like they're really closely zoomed in, and then they zoom out really quick. They show you like where the camera is. They do that a whole lot. I like that.
Yeah, but good solid movie.
Yeah. Speaking of a movie that shot really well, I was just gonna say it. Connor, we can maybe get into yours if you want.
I'm down.
You want to describe the plot of this movie? Very interesting plot.
I mean, it's almost like two movies, in one if you just split it right down the middle.
Yeah.
But yeah, Full Metal Jacket, picks up right at the beginning of boot camp, follow him along with Arlie Ermy giving one of the greatest performances in any military movie ever, just because he wasn't an actor. He was an actual drill instructor. And then, it takes place in the Vietnam War.
Yeah, wow, that was really vague. That was a really quick
that's
summary. I like it.
We can dive right in.
I don't know. I might want to let you guys go first. I have a lot to say about this movie. We just talked about it a couple episodes ago. Connor was like racking off my 4.5s that I have that I don't really give out 5s that often. And I saw what Dan's rating was for this. I hate doing that, but I saw what Dan's rating was. I'm very interested to see what his thoughts are on this movie. I don't want to spoil it, but I have this at a 5 out of 5, which I don't give out very often. I thought this was really incredible. I have to admit. Just what it has to say about the Vietnam War, especially at the time. I feel like that would not be a bold thing to make nowadays, or even in like the 90s, the early 2000s. But the fact that this was kind of made right after it, like just slapping you in the face with this is really what happened, and kind of the brainwashing in a way of what the Marines or what they are doing to the Marines in boot camp, but also I think there is something to say about the ineffectiveness of how they should be training the Marines as well. They more train them as killing machines rather than actual smart soldiers. And I think that the biggest evidence of that is when Cowboy is put in charge at the very end of the film and he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. Like, I think that's purposely someone who is in that boot camp that you were sat with for 40 minutes. You saw him train, and yet he is put in charge through all that. He does not know what to do. And there is more that I want to say about the movie, but I don't want to ramble, so I'll let you guys pop in if you want.
This is one of my favorite Marine Corps movies. Actually, it's maybe my favorite. Jarhead might be slightly above it, which I almost picked. But I also had this at a 5 out of 5 stone.
How is the parallel between like what you experienced and like what this is? Because I know this is obviously in the 70s it's supposed to take place.
Honestly, not too different. Literally, the biggest difference in boot camp is the very beginning scene when they're getting their heads shaved. They are not that gentle. My head got cut 4 different times at boot camp from just how aggressive they're buzzing your head. Jimmy, you would do great.
I mean, now, it would be fantastic.
Ready to
go. But yeah, it's like kind of eerie to me. So I was in Alpha Company at boot camp, and our barracks were currently under like reconstruction.
Wait, were you at Lejeune, Connor?
Boot camp's in Parris Island, South Carolina.
Yeah. When you actually were in North Carolina, were you at Lejeune?
I was an hour north of it at a air base called Cherry Point. But yeah, I went to Lejeune all the time. They have like a private beach there, and I had some buddies down there, so I would hang out there a good amount.
Nice. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good. But so Alpha Company's barracks were being renovated when I was at boot camp. So we had the barracks that were across the street from the range, which was off of mainland, is what they called it. And they were the old barracks, which looked exactly like these, which were from like the Vietnam era, from what we were told. But everything is pretty accurate. How they're all standing on line with their like arms out and then down to their side. Pretty accurate. I think it's your 5th day at boot camp. It's called Black Friday. And that's when you actually meet your drill instructors. Because the first few days you just have receiving drill instructors that are getting you around the island to get like your rifle, your uniforms, everything you need. And then Black Friday is when you meet your drill instructor. And that opening scene with Arlie Ermy is pretty accurate, except there would be 4 drill instructors, not just 1.
I said, I know this would have been a 1 out of 5 for you if it was not accurate.
Yeah, 100%.
Biggest pet peeve.
Yeah.
Jimmy, what's your general take on this, or how do you see this fitting into Kubrick's work in general?
When you guys were saying like Full Metal Jacket, it's 2 different movies, and like the first half when they're in boot camp is fantastic, but then it's hard to do better after the private pile scene. Like when that movie peaks right there, you're just like when you're just dropped into this, you know, crazy training regime, and then like he just snaps and goes crazy and everything like that. Then it takes a turn, and then you're in Vietnam, and it's just like, oh, I didn't know we were going to do this. I thought it was going to be a different way. But then like Matthew Modine playing a combat photographer, like I wasn't expecting Private Joker to go in doing that. And I think, even the drill sergeant was surprised at that. But he's like, what do you mean? He's like, you're a killer. How are you going to go and do this photography stuff and everything like that? But it gives you like two sides of the horrors of war, like not only just the training part, but then also like what you have to do to survive in this chaotic environment. And like I think Kubrick captures that so well. But I mean, just looking at Arlie Ermy, like I can't believe that I can, but like he has two performances in back-to-back movies. Like Full Metal Jacket is 87, and then I think he did Mississippi Burning in the same year. You're just like, how is this person that's not really an actor giving us these incredible performances? And he got a Golden Globe nomination out of it, which is ridiculous because it's just mind-blowing at that point.
Yeah, I think also in terms of the acting, Vincent D'Onofrio, he might just be one of the actors, like he doesn't get talked about too much, like in conversations about great like he's an incredible actor, and he's really, really good in this. I think I kind of agree with what you're saying. The second half of this for me is where it kind of loses me, and it's always been like that. I think it's I think it's supposed to feel that way, but I think it's such a dramatic shift, and it just never quite works in the back half for me. And I think I always kind of wait to not feel that way, but it never really happens when I watch this.
It's weird to say that about a war movie because you really want the combat part of it, but then like the training part is so good you can't ever top what they did there.
Yeah. This has never been my favorite from Kubrick, but I do respect what he was doing. And like you mentioned, Stone, making this in 1987 was definitely a big deal. And I respect it for sure. Because I think, digging into what this war was actually like and getting through, some of the propaganda and maybe false views about what we were doing was important at the time. So, but it's not my favorite movie.
I want to shoot an idea to you guys that was probably, I don't know, you probably had the same thought too, but I kind of couldn't get over it when I was watching it because this is my first, you can probably figure out that this is my first time watching it.
Really?
Is the fact that, Vincent D'Onofrio and Adam Baldwin, who play Animal Mother, look very similar. They're very similar looking guys. And I think what Kubrick purposely did that, and he's kind of showing us that this could have been Private Pile. Because I think Private Pile, I'm almost positive that he has autism. I'm almost positive. Because he just doesn't necessarily behave normally in society. Like he's smiling, obviously, when he shouldn't be smiling. And that's, a staple of that condition. And I think that you either had two different ways that he could have adapted to boot camp is, his eventual end or turning into Animal Mother. And I think that's also possibly what Joker sees in him as well. And at the very end, when he's about to kill that woman, that's why, I think it's purposeful that Animal Mother is like the last guy standing, basically, of this new unit, because that is Private Lyle. Like that's who Joker is seeing in him, like who he could have become, and possibly the fact that maybe this was going to end two ways for Pyle. It was either going to end there, or how it ended, or it's going to, he was going to turn into this kind of monster in a way, not really caring. And I think it's very also obviously very telling that this person who is trying to kill them is just a woman. She doesn't look like she's part of the military in any way. Looks like she's just trying to defend herself. And you totally get the reason why she's doing that because of that helicopter scene where they're just like mowing down random civilians and stuff like that. But yeah, that the fact that they looked, I don't know if you guys caught that, the fact that those two actors look so similar, I think was totally done on purpose.
Now that you pointed out, that makes sense.
I have a question for you guys in general that I was thinking about the other day. I was watching a video about this movie, and when you look at Kubrick in general, does it take away from his status as like an all-time director that Kubrick was never able to communicate with people? And like I think that was his biggest issue. Like he could never communicate to his actors what he actually wanted. So rather than being able to effectively communicate and get the performances he wanted, he would just shoot things over and over and over and over. And a lot of times in a lot of his movies, it just ended up with actors breaking down. And like I think that indicate like that's not a good thing as a director. Like you might eventually get the performance you want on the 50th take, but it's a waste of money, it's a waste of time, and it's not good for your actors. And I just think like it's a flaw. Like I just think he was a bad communicator, and I wanted to get your guys' opinion on that.
Have you guys ever been on a movie set before? Have you ever watched anything get directed or anything like that?
No.
So I used to live in Los Angeles, and I was on 2 movie sets in my entire life. One happened to be Magic Mike, the first one. Don't ask how I was on the set. But
yeah, that's pretty good. That's not a bad movie. The second one's pretty decent too. Sorry.
It's unexpected when you walk into this set and you don't know what the movie is, and you're just like McConaughey and assless chaps and everything like that. But like watching Soderbergh try to direct this and try to get what he wants, it's different from director to director. But like having to see Channing Tatum do the same move 12 times in a row, but it's like it's hard for them to communicate, especially with an ensemble that big, to get them to do what they want in all these scenes. And like when you watch it firsthand, it's much you get a much different view from seeing it from other perspectives and stuff of that nature. Because I was like, didn't they shoot this like 10 times already? Why are we still doing this? I'm saying this to myself, not out loud, because I'm not trying to get beat up on the set, but it was just super interesting for me to actually see firsthand how like the directors and everything, they set up the shots and get everything done. But to get like one scene done, sometimes it does take 25 minutes when it's only like, should be done like that. But they're so neurotic about what they want people to see, it just doesn't communicate back to them.
I guess what I think about the fact is that this movie was made towards like the tail end of Kubrick's career. So by this time, these actors should know, probably in the space of Hollywood, how he directs, and that this is an issue with him, especially all the stories that came from The Shining. So would it be frustrating? And is it not the best when you're a director? Sure. But I mean, Fincher does the same thing, even though he can communicate with actors. So like I said, I think it's more of me. It's kind of part of the deal. Like you sign on for this director and you kind of know how he's probably going to be. And obviously from his work in the past, even if, the actors knew going into it, I'm not sure he'll be able to tell me what he wants. But he eventually gets something that affects a lot of people and works. So I think they sign on and they're kind of like along for the ride kind of a thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, my thoughts too is I need to see more of his work because I think I'm missing 4 of his filmography before I definitively make this statement. But there is an argument that Kubrick is the greatest director ever, merely for the fact that almost every one of his movies you can argue is the best movie in that genre. Obviously, you don't hold this in as high regard as it usually is held down, but I think a lot of people had this at a 5 out of 5 and is always in conversation with things like Saving Private Ryan as one of the best war films ever. The Shining is always there for best horror. 2001: Space Odyssey, best, sci-fi space movie.
Yeah, when he does things, yeah, I mean, you can say the same thing about like Barry Lyndon when it comes to period pieces. Like it's fucking insane. Like, so I definitely agree. He was an interesting guy, but I do hear what you're saying, Stone. At this point, it's like nobody would be surprised, and I don't think that excuses it. But again, like you said, it's not like actors were ignorant to the fact that that's how he was. I think one of the funnier stories from this is the woman that played who was a girl that played the NVA sniper or whatever. They only did one take of like her death, and he wanted to do it again. He like showed it to her, and she like literally had a mental breakdown, like ran off the set and never, I think, came back. So cool. They never got to do another take for it.
Good for her.
But yeah,
she got out of a long work day.
Yeah, I don't think she quite knew what she was.
I mean, yeah, how many times do you want to die over and over on set?
Just
The
one
thing,
for apparently.
the thing that Kubrick does better than any director is he captures the descent into madness for certain characters. Like I've never like from Jack Torrance and like Buck Turgeon and Doctor Strangelove to watch him like deteriorate over that movie and get crazier and crazier. Alex from
Private
The
Pile.
Clockwork Orange, Private Pile, everything like that. You can actually you're watching it step by step unfold how this person is just losing their mind.
I don't know if you can
That's
see,
it.
but I have The Clockwork Orange right back there. It's
I can I see the
yeah, it's a book behind all the scenes and explaining every shot basically, and it also comes with the DVD.
Matthew Modine actually has a book from his notes from Full Metal Jacket that he put together that they made into like an audiobook and a book you can like read and go back and like experience what he was thinking and playing the role.
That's interesting you say that because I was going to ask you guys. I think Joker is a very interesting character because he's kind of painted sometimes like a good person, right? He has the peace pendant on or sticker or whatever that is, and he doesn't necessarily think of himself as a killing machine. And he obviously, from seeing what happened to Private Pile, is a different person. Like he's changed because of that. And but there are scenes where he kind of, even though he has that mindset in the back of him, still falls into line with what these guys are doing. Like my one thought is the time where they bring that woman out and they're betting like $10, $15 on her, stuff like that. Like obviously that's not a good thing, and he's sitting there just laughing along with it. Like there's nothing there to separate him from that. And I think the moment that's super telling is when he shoots the girl at the end. He is singing that song, the Mickey Mouse song, with everybody. Like he's not separating himself from them. And I saw someone say this, which is really interesting, was that I think at the very beginning of the movie, when it came to Private Pile, there's a moment when Hartman yells at him and he's like, "What is this Mickey Mouse shit?" Like basically that shouldn't belong in the Marines. And then at the very end of the movie, the Marines are singing about Mickey Mouse, being like, the mindset that they have at the end is the comical shit that shouldn't be in the military. The way that they view these people and the way they treat these people. That's what's fucking funny about this whole thing. That's what Kubrick is trying to say here.
And I think what you're saying, Stone, is kind of the point in terms of he may be a decent person when you look at him in a vacuum as an individual, but the entire point of this era of training was really to create this like group think, like hive mind, where everyone lost individuality, lost their ability to think critically or act as their own individual person. They're all just kind of in line with each other. And I think and throughout history, when you look at war, when you see people in situations like this that are just chaotic and they're able to do whatever they want, people in groups, even if there may be a couple decent people in there, will do horrible things because no one is saying, "What are you doing?"
I actually want to add on to that, Dan, because you said it in this era, that's still very much like a real thing. Like at boot camp, like it's the wildest thing. Honestly, the hardest part is not physically, it's all mentally. But if you get through the first 3 weeks, you can do boot camp because at that point you are just brain dead at all times. Like you're told when to take off your left sock, when to put it on, when to dry your body off after a shower, when to wash your hair, when to wash your body. Like they literally strip you of all forms of like kind of free thinking to build you up in this like team mindset. That's still very relevant today.
And I think I guess part of the goal is to put people under so much stress that when they get into high stress situations in combat, they're able to function, because the average person will just literally, I think, stop and freeze and die, like to be blunt. But I think there should be a balance, right, in terms of like having soldiers that are human, but also able to function. I think maybe you see it can go too far. And I agree with what you said, Stone, in terms of Pyle being intellectually different in some way. And I think the movie shows you like there's a lack of understanding of that, and there's a lack of ability to treat him as a person and not just as a robot. and a lack of ability to understand, like, he is not responding in the same way as he should be or the way they want, but they just keep trying to put a square peg into a round hole. So
even the way that Pyle and Animal Mother talk and like speak is very similar. It's like slow and drawn out just a little bit.
yeah.
Dude, I swear to you, my rack mate in boot camp was exactly like Private Pyle in the first 10 minutes of this movie. It was painful. I was in charge of like making his bed every day and like rolling his sleeves to make sure everything looked good.
Yeah.
You're Joker.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I also did get in trouble for joking around. So
Did you have a nickname?
I don't think I did at boot camp.
Hopefully it wasn't
Like-
Pyle.
No, yeah. No. Actually, I kind of made it so my drill instructors did not know who I was until like I think week 9 is when they figured out who I was.
They just referred to you as what?
It was just like this recruit. I mean, like they might have known my last name Crumman. Like when
What do they call you though? They call you Crummy?
Crumman. It would be Crumman or just recruit. That's what
Okay.
we're all called as recruits, or piece of shit.
That's what I was wondering. I was wondering if they had any nicknames for you.
You know what
Like
is
that.
so funny, because like Dan was talking about like that era versus like I brought in the modern era, is like they aren't allowed to cuss at us anymore, which like they obviously still do when officers aren't around. But I do want to share a quick story about the greatest burger I've ever had. It was at boot camp, and when I went, there was 3 phases. There's now 4. But we were in 3rd phase doing what was called the manhunt, which was just teams of 4, which is called a fire squad. And then you had to try and make it across this 1 mile stretch. And like some of it was just pure grass and like marsh, some of it was wooded, and some of it was like a tarmac. And so the first like half a mile or like quarter of a mile, you're literally just what people call army crawling, but since we're Marines, we call it low crawling. Through all of this. We get into the woods, and then I think it was 15 minutes, they threw out a giant smoke bomb. And that was your time to like cross the tarmac. And I was the fire squad leader. And I was like, all right, guys, we're going to let the first one go. We're all just going to chill and catch our breath. And then once the second one goes, that's when we'll cross and just finish this course. Well, 2 of my guys went immediately. And then so we were split up in like the worst place we could be split up. And we had to wait 15 minutes. So I'm with my buddy Butler, and I was like, let's fucking pray that they're just waiting right across the road. So we finally get over there. And when we started, they put popsicle sticks into our pocket. And if we got caught, they took that. And then we would just go to the sand pit and do like 5 minutes of what they called intensive training, which is just like burpees, push-ups, crunches, everything in the sand. And so we get over there and we actually find them. And we're running over to them, and there's drill instructors and combat instructors roaming around the woods looking for you. We finally get over there, and all of a sudden, we see someone, and we all drop, and I hear stand the fuck up, and I was the only one that did. And it was my senior drill instructor. He came over, he's like, do you want me to take your popsicle stick, or you just want me punished now? And I was like, I'll take punishment now. And he punched me in the face.
Nice.
Which, again, is a big no-no. And then,
Okay.
so it was like the next day we finally got back to the barracks, and the commanding officer, or was it, I think it was the commanding officer, saw that I had a black eye and pulled me into his office and was like, what the fuck happened to you? I was like, I fell into a tree. And he was like, what actually happened? I was like, I fell into a tree. And I held true to that story. And later that day, my senior drill instructor brought me into his office, and I was like, thanks for not red. And he gave me a McDonald's McDouble. And it's the greatest burger I've ever had.
McDouble's good. It's just so small.
I would have
But when
asked for
you're
a
eating
Big
the
Mac.
food that we've been eating for the last 2 months, it was
Yes.
the greatest tasting thing I've ever had.
That's
fair.
wild. That's wild. It reminds me of the fact that there's like these camps out there that are not for military guys that like sometimes they'll pay for it and they make you a man. And it's like you pay like thousands of dollars to go there, and for these guys to be like, you're a sad piece of shit. No woman will ever love you. Roll over. Give me 5. And it's like these 55-year-old like fathers of 3 divorced.
People
It's
choosing
like
to do that need some like psychosexual analysis.
I kind of want to go to one of them just to like laugh at them.
Yeah.
you could be the one like running them, you know.
Connor, maybe quickly just to wrap this up, I would say when you watch this or when you think about training or preparing for combat or whatever, like, what do you think an idealized version of this would look like? Or like, what do you think the flaws are when you watch this, or what do you think about it? Do you think it works? Like, what is your take on training in general in the military?
I see both sides, honestly. So, like I told you, like we're still stripped of our identity. We're the only branch that still does that. Every other branch, they're immediately called private, or I think it's airmen, whatever they are when they first get there. We're the only ones called recruit when we get there and don't actually have a rank and, blah, blah, blah. All because that's like the big culminating event for Marines is the thing called the Crucible at the end of boot camp, which is 3 days, minimal food, minimal sleep, a lot of training and stuff to earn the title Marine. I think it's good in some aspects, especially for Marines, because, like we're the first fighting force there is before any other branch really goes in, besides like special operations. But then, there's also other sides of it because we are so robotic at times. And also, like, I still think like part of it has still like kind of mentally broke me, which like is my wife's biggest issue with me every time we do argue, is because I am so literal with everything. Like sometimes I do have a hard time like reading deeper or just like analyzing or like not picking up on like, what certain people actually mean. I'm very critical on that. And like, it's the wildest experience being in. And I've told this to Taylor too. Like, it's a joke, but like, there's also some seriousness behind it. Like, if we miss a dentist appointment, like, we risk jail time, basically, because you're disobeying a direct order.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, along with your training, I guess, like I said, I hinted at it earlier. I think that this movie talks about so much the fact, like, I think it's purposely placed that the beginning is all about training for a war and that the end is how poorly executed these guys are actually in war. And like the number one sign of that is the fact that Cowboy like looks over the corner and he's like, all right, let me call this dude, like stands up perfectly in line with where the sniper is. Like he's terrible at it. And you don't see any training for like actual like tactical combat, like logistically, like what you should do, like what you should search for, stuff like that. And they're like, oh yeah, you're off by like a little bit, like right away. Is there anything in the Marines that they train you for like actually how to navigate on the field when you are possibly in a combat scenario?
Yeah, so that's actually something else I was gonna add. So there's some good and bad here. Like I served in a wartime, but it was like towards the tail end of our war in Afghanistan, Iraq. Like obviously this was Vietnam where they went to boot camp and immediately shipped out.
Yep.
But now, even if it is like, let's say it was the early 2000s when we were actively going to like Afghanistan, Iraq very frequently. Now it's boot camp. And then depending on your jobs, like I was in aviation and worked on C-130s. After boot camp, I went to combat training, which is 4 more weeks in North Carolina. And that's where you actually like are in the field for, I think we were in the field for 29 straight days, like sleeping outside, living off MREs only, blah, 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 not showering. We all smell horrible. Nice. But then if you're like actually in infantry based, if that's your job, like machine gun or artillery, stuff like that, you go to an 8-week long training. And then it's like basically doing double everything I did at combat training. But then you also go to your unit before you would ever deploy to actually learn more. And that's your entire day to day. It's like a 9 to 5 of just like shooting, doing combat drills, staying in shape, running, PTing, whatever. So the training's definitely much better now than it was back then because it was just boot camp, ship off. Yeah. Also, a big difference is drill instructors are not on the rifle range when we were learning to shoot at boot camp due to the fact of stress levels, worrying about either a recruit shooting themselves or shooting a drill instructor.
Yeah. Good tie into this movie. As a final question, do you guys think if Arnold had been Animal Mother, that would have been distracting?
Was that in consideration?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm
that
so happy
totally
he wasn't.
eliminates my theory then, right? That totally that they look alike. Okay, because they really do. Like if you look, like I'm looking at Letterboxd, and like the actors are right next to each other. Like Vincent D'Onofrio and Adam Baldwin look so much alike each other. They really do.
Arnold turned it down to do Running Man, but he was.
Yeah, that would have been really distracting.
Yeah, no, I'm happy he was not in it. It's almost like how they always cast John Cena in Marine movies, and they all flop.
Just because he's a big guy.
Yeah, and he's just always had that jarhead haircut.
One thing that also stood out to me too was that Hartman, when he's about to get shot, right? He finally does not yell. It's like the only time in the movie where he doesn't yell and he calms down and he's like, "Hey man, like, what are you doing?" And I thought about the fact is that he says that at first, like he's like calm and actually like acts like a normal person for a second.
But it's too late.
But then he turns on his drill sergeant voice again. Then he gets shot.
Instructor.
And
I think it's too late. It's too late to actually treat someone like a person. Like at that point.
Well, he goes back into his drill instructor like persona, and I thought just maybe it would have worked if you didn't do that. You know, maybe that was a thought. Like maybe don't do what has been pushing Private Pyle to do this.
Yeah,
that would have been really smart.
Yeah, but then at the same time, I mean, he might be like, you know, Private Pyle's been kind of fearful of me. Maybe I can kind of snap him back into that by yelling again.
I don't know.
Which,
yeah, didn't work.
Which is funny that I just corrected you, Stone, on that. Because there's a few weeks ago, Dan had posted a video, and someone was like, "Were you in the Marines?" And then, like, I was texting Dan about it on the side because he had tagged me. He's like, "No, Movie Shark was, though." And I, like, told Dan, I'm like, "Dude, you, like, missed lingo. And, like, it's nothing wrong on your end." I was like, "But you missed lingo that, like, no Marine would ever mess up." And, like, even my sergeant had texted me, who follows Dan. And he was like, I, like, mentioned it. And he's like, "Yeah, I saw that he mentioned you in the comments." He's like, he got, like, some lingo wrong in that when we were talking about it. But
what was that video even about?
I don't remember.
Wow.
But
I don't
remember. Yeah, but like he said something like drill sergeant instead of drill instructor, and he was specifically talking about Marines in the video. And I was like, yeah, like that was a dumb question about that dude if he was in, which his profile said he was.
Stolen valor.
If I ever like try to do that, I'm glad because I just made a video about Saving Private Ryan, so I'm glad that I didn't use any terminology there. Probably would have got it right. But speaking of Saving Private Ryan, we could talk about the movie next that came out the exact same year as it. The Thin Red Line. Funny enough, I'm the one that suggested this, and I hadn't watched this. This is going to be really funny. But the reason why I suggested it is because I have Criterions. I bought like a couple Criterions at Barnes & Noble. And this is one of the Criterions I bought based on my brother's recommendation. And I put it in to start watching it. Funny thing about anybody listening about Criterions, and Dan's going to fucking laugh at this when I say this, they don't have closed captioning on Criterions. So I'm very much used to watching movies on closed captioning just because it helps me make sure I don't miss something that somebody says. And I'm not going to lie, I have this, but then I rented it on TV because I needed my closed captioning.
I was actually wondering about that recently. I was like, I wonder if they watch everything with closed captioning because I do, because I got that military grade tinnitus, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, this movie is very much in the thick of, you know, Japan is where the setting. I'm sure it was probably shot there too, because that's something this movie.
Guadalcanal.
Right. It's in like that. It's in the Pacific Ocean, right? Okay. Sorry, that's what I meant. That's what I meant.
Okay, yeah, because Guadalcanal is a huge battle in the Marine Corps history, which they mentioned in this. Sorry, go ahead.
Right. So that's what this movie's about. Is about, you know, during World War II, the Battle of the Guadalcanal. But yeah, very much this was in. That's something about this film. So the Thin Red Line is just basically that. It's about, you know, these guys in World War II during this battle. That's basically all this movie is, and it's directed by Terrence Malick. And this is my first movie I've ever watched from Terrence Malick, and he has a lot of really popular movies that really seem that they would interest me. I have to say though, this movie is structured so not what I was expecting. It's very strange. There really necessarily isn't. You can say it's Jim Caviezel is the main character, but kind of not really. there's like sections where I kind of forget he's in the movie, and then he pops up, and you're trying to like. There's emotional moments with like Woody Harrelson, and he's only in the movie for like 3 seconds, and all of a sudden he's gone, and then all of a sudden John Cusack pops in, and then you have Sean Penn, all these people, and the one thing I took away from this is I think that Terrence Malick was trying to show the audience how chaotic war is and how time can just get lost. And in my opinion, that's really interesting and cool. I don't know if that works for a movie per se for me. And it's really interesting that he uses this. I think from my research, I think this might be a staple with him is that they have these monologues that people are saying like in their heads. And they do that with a bunch of characters. And sometimes I don't know which character is saying it at which time. But yeah, it's just like there's a scene where there's this one guy who's kind of going crazy on the battlefield, and you have a shot of him going like saying some stuff, like just talking to himself, and then all of a sudden the next scene is him again talking to himself, but it's nighttime, and I was like, okay, time has passed, and like the passage of time here is just really doesn't per se work for me because I feel like there's moments that I really wanted to see, and like one thing is like when Jim Caviezel dies, like they don't discover his body, like he's already buried. I was like, oh shit, okay, I guess we're here now. And this thing just moves so fast. But like I said, I think that's totally purposeful. And one thing that really frustrated me as well, like I was frustrated. I own this movie, I bought this movie, but I think I just need to maybe warm up to how Terrence Malick films his movies or does his films. Is also I was having trouble placing, like figuring out what the objective was that they were trying to do. They're on this huge hill for like 45 minutes. It's just nothing but long grass. And I was curious, like, what exactly is the plan here? Maybe that's what they were wondering too, but there's constant shots of just random guys just running and getting blown up. And I'm like, where are they going? Like, who's in charge of them? And it kind of seemed chaotic to me, but like I said, that might have been intentional
in the beginning.
How so? Go ahead. Cause sorry, go ahead. Because like I said, the structure of this film is just throws me
go
off.
right back into it. But like literally right before they were about to run up the hill, they mentioned that like this is their only route that they can go is going straight up this hill because I think they said like the left in the woods was like Japanese artillery maybe, and then in the right of the woods was like just Japanese like soldiers. So like they only had this one option to get this position.
Jimmy, what's your take on this movie in general?
I can answer some questions you've posed of why the movie looks so chaotic. The reason they're jumping around from character to character is because Terrence Malick cut and edited this movie so many times. So, like, Jim Caviezel's not the original main character in the script of this movie. Adrian Brody's character is supposed to be the main character.
You're fucking kidding me. That's insane.
He had no idea he wasn't even in the movie except for 2 lines until they premiered the movie. And he's like, where the fuck did my scenes go? And he's like, sorry. He's like, Jim's now the main character. It's like anytime you see them jumping around, like there's longer scenes that he just cut people out of. Like we see Jared Leto for like 2 seconds and Woody Harrelson for 3 seconds. It was just like, and there's so many people that were in this movie that aren't even in it. Like Bill Pullman was supposed to be in it. Mickey Rourke's in it. Luke Haas, all kinds of people that just all left on the cutting room floor because they finally decided to go with the story. We're like, all right, we're just going to focus on Jim's character, and we're just going to put Adrian over here because he is the original main character of the whole thing, and that's the character they wanted to focus on the most.
Wild.
And like, you wouldn't know the stories behind the Thin Red Line are maybe as good as the movie The Thin Red Line because there's so many people that are like, oh, I was in this. We're like, well, not really because we didn't see you. So everything like that. But like Nick Nolte's character, like this is one of the best Nick Nolte performances I've ever seen. Like he could legitimately, you could tell me that he was like a colonel just screaming at people on a beach. And like I think it's the first time in a war movie I've seen an officer like Elias Koteas' character, Captain Stavros, just refusing to commit his men. He's like, I can't send them to their deaths. I can't do that. He's like, well, you're going to do it because I'm telling you to do it. He's like, I won't. I grew up, I trained with these men. I've lived with them. I can't sacrifice them for something I don't think we're going to accomplish at that point. And that's the first time I think I remember seeing that in a war movie up to that point.
Yeah, I think it watching that specifically what you're talking about, Jimmy, reminded me of Paths of Glory, which talking about Kubrick, I mean, I think Paths of Glory blows Full Metal Jacket out of the water if you want to talk about war movies, but
another time.
Yeah. In regards to what you were saying, The first cut of this was like 5 hours long.
Holy shit.
Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of it got cut out. And I think you feel that. Like, I think this feels really
choppy. It feels so
disjointed.
choppy, man.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like a Walmart Chazelle, like how he's very snappy with his camera movement.
Calling Terrence Malick Walmart or anything is wild, but
I mean, the fact that you see Tim Blake Nelson at the beginning, and I was like, okay, he's part of their unit. I don't think you see him until they're done with the battle and he's walking away. Like, they don't have characters you focus on, really. Like, they don't give a shit about that.
I would have preferred watching 5 hours of this. Like, I would have preferred watching 5 hours of this.
Yes,
honestly.
more coherent.
Or make a limited series and do just a 5-6 episode limited series.
Yeah, I also just think I didn't like this very much in general. I think I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. What I said on Letterboxd was, this is a Vietnam movie, right? Like, this philosophy I don't think applies to World War II. You can't go into a World War II movie and be like, oh, why are we doing it? We're doing this because the Japanese killed like 10 to 30 million people in Asia over the course of a decade. And we went to stop them, and we went to stop the Germans from what they were like. It's not like, oh, what are we doing there, man? It's like, no, that doesn't work in the Pacific. And all he had to do was set this in Vietnam, and I would enjoy it a lot more. But I just think it you can answer all the questions Terrence Malick's asking. I think the most interesting thing it's doing is like the amount of time it spends lingering on nature and wildlife and plants. And
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, because you get the point. Like, it's we're here on this place that's absolutely beautiful and has all this incredible, fauna and whatnot. And at the same time, right next to that, we're just all killing each other. And it's terrible, but this wasn't a war without a mission or without a point. And this Guadalcanal was incredibly important to getting through Melanesia and being able to work our way into the Pacific. Like, this was a turning point in the war that the United States was really going on the offensive from this point on. And Japan was reeling. So I just think framing a really important battle and a really important war in that way is just kind of silly to me, to be honest.
I'd say all the poetry does not work for me. Like, the fact is, where is our glory? Is it in the clouds, or is it in the dirt that we're stepping on? Like, that doesn't work for me. It really doesn't. And I don't know who's speaking, right? I guess they show you kind of the guy on screen, but I think there's sometimes they cut away to another guy, and I'm like, who's the one talking? See, this is why closed captioning was important for this film, because I was like, who is doing this right now? Is Jack the one with the wife?
Yeah, it's Ben Chaplin. Yeah.
I was watching this at 5 a.m. this morning because I work night shifts. So I watched all three of these movies last night.
Jesus Christ.
I binged them. They're fresh in my mind, though. What an insane thing. I was like, okay, yes, grass, people are dying that I haven't seen before. All of a sudden, baby, I am leaving you because I found another dude. I was like, what the fuck? Like, this woman that you've been showing is just like, sorry, honey, I hope you accept this.
I mean, Dear John letters are a very real thing.
Oh my gosh. I was not expecting that at all. And the thing is that's funny is because he doesn't, because how the movie's like cut, he really doesn't get any much more time like in the film at all. It's just like, yeah, his wife ditched him. You're seeing all these flashbacks over the entire movie. Yeah, she's kind of not the best. Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe that. I was getting a little tired, but that woke me up. I was like, what? She just left him after all these dreamlike scenes we've been seeing of them just in the same room. Ugh, I hated those flashbacks.
You know what's funny is I really thought Stone picked this movie just so Dan would have to watch another Jared Leto movie.
I didn't know he was in it, and I was like, I hope he dies for Dan's sake. And
the first thing I thought of, which might help Dan raise this to a 5-star, is the fact that Jared Leto plays the most made fun of rank in the entire military across all branches.
There you go. Maybe that was purposeful.
Yeah. Jimmy, how much do you like this, or what are your thoughts in general? Like, does it work for
I
you?
hear, I hear, I hear what you guys are all saying, but The Thin Red Line is probably my favorite war movie of all time.
Yeah, go
Really?
off about it.
Just and like it doesn't work without Nick Nolte's character. That's what makes the whole movie. Like Saving Private Ryan, I know came out the same year, and everybody wants to focus on those that opening scene, but like the middle of Saving Private Ryan to me is weak. Where like the whole thing of the Thin Red Line just works for me, and like you're getting different stories about people like abandoning their unit and going to live with the natives, and just kind of showing like a more immersive aspect of what was going through soldiers' minds at that point. But when the brutality starts, man, like there's people just getting blown up left and right, and there's no let up. And especially, from the officer's perspective, where like Nick Nolte can't get this guy to do what he says. Like, I'm going to come up there and then I'm going to see it. He's like, what are you doing here? Like that was some of the most interesting stuff to me. Just Nick Nolte screaming for like 20 minutes. I was like, how does this guy have a voice at this point?
Does he have cancer? Like he has something. Like I was trying to pay attention. Like when he does his, inner voice, he has something wrong with him, which is why he's there. Correct? Like he's
Yeah.
dying.
I don't know if he's dying, but I know he's got some kind of illness or something
Okay.
along those lines. I don't know if they say specifically or not.
Yeah, that's like with the cutting. Like that was one thing with
Yeah.
his character. I did really like him. I think he's definitely the highlight of this film. I wish he was the main character. That would have been way more interesting. And he's kind of like the second or third main character, I would say. By the way, he like vanishes towards the end, which I was okay. I was really disappointed by. But there's like this scene where he's like calling the shots, and there's like a mortar going off right next to him. And then the next time we see him, he's already there, like with them. And I was just like, whoa, okay. Like I guess he's there. Like I said, it was tough for me to like think about the fact of where everyone is on the battlefield and where they're trying to. It is a hill, but like it's like 17 hills, like all combined. Like we have to get over this one hump is what they have to do, and it's like I was just trying to think about where everyone was and where they're trying to go and stuff like that. It seems simple, but like I said, it was just the way it was cut. I was like, I had to figure some stuff out.
Jimmy,
The
what
one-
did you rate this?
For me, it's a 5, but that's just me
Okay,
personally.
I'm at a 4. So
Like, but the thing that threw me off the most was John Savage being in this movie, just because it's a group of younger actors, and then you have the guy from The Deer Hunter, and like I was like, it's just weird to me that John Savage is in this movie with people he's like 20 years older than, but he's still a sergeant and everything like that.
Jimmy, what do you think about? I guess kind of like what I was saying in terms of the philosophy of the movie. Like, how do you think that fits? I guess.
Yeah, what do you think the movie's about? Like the main theme.
When you're thinking about World War II, the Pacific theater kind of gets overlooked because we're mainly focusing on Europe, where like the heart of this matter lies. But like, and the Pacific doesn't really get that much coverage, except in like things like Midway. But when you're on those islands, like if you ever seen like Letters from Iwo Jima and Flags of Our Fathers, those give you a much better perspective of what these Marines and soldiers were dealing with, because like you're in this jungle and like there's people coming out of tunnels in the ground and everything like that, and like you're just not expecting this. It's such a different war theater from what you see in Europe, and it's brutality over here, and there's still war over there, but you're not dealing with that type of enemy. And like I like that like when Jim Caviezel's character kind of just like goes AWOL. Like you figured they would just let him go. He's just hanging out with the natives, and they're like, "No, you're coming back to go to the specific battle." But I mean, I think seeing the natives for me was I don't want to keep calling them natives, but like everything like that. That was super an interesting theme to see, like, and them connecting with these people, because mostly when you think of war, you think these people are they're the supporters, and they're animals and everything like that, and we need to kill them. But it didn't go in that place. Like they just wanted peace. His character did, at least.
I think I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, I feel like when you think about this movie, it almost, and I think it's very humanizing of the enemy and all, and that's not a bad thing. But again, this was not like an imperialist attack by the United States. Like, Japan was taking people, like, I don't want to get into it, but like what they were doing to people for, again, literally over a decade was inexcusable. And like, I just, again, don't think this is a war where it's just like, oh, they're just protecting their home. It's like, no, Japan was an imperialist force for hundreds of years in Asia. And even here, they're in a place they were not supposed to be. They're not defending their home. So it's just like, it's strange to really linger on the pity. I don't know. This is a harsh view, but like, that's just how I feel about about this.
I'm curious to know how much we knew about what Japan was actually doing at the time of World War II. Like, were we aware of all the atrocities that, like, I know about, like, everything that happened to China, everything like that, but just like what they were doing out there. I don't know if that came out like afterwards or like, after we, basically took over Japan, if that was more well known. Like, I just want to know like what the soldiers would have known at that point, besides propaganda we were probably given at the time based on Japanese internment and stuff like that.
So basically just from what they had done to Shanghai, I think that was at the end of the 20s or in the 30s, like that was all very well known. And I mean, their war with China was ongoing for a very long time. I don't think anyone would have been in the dark, 15 years after that. But again, like this is not taking place on like the Japanese mainland. This is Japan in a place that they shouldn't be. And again, does that mean? And I love Letters from Iwo Jima, which is very humanizing to the Japanese, but also from a higher point of view where you're looking at a general, who's trying to determine what's feasible in terms of defense. How much should he? And a lot of the same things we're talking about in this movie in terms of how many people should I be willing to sacrifice? What is the actual cause? What are our goals? Like seeing Japanese leadership deal with that, I think is very interesting. And they did have generals who were not really on board with what they were doing. And I think we're struggling with a lot of those things, just like the Germans had some generals like that. So I do think that's a great movie. I don't know. It's just, this is a movie I just kind of struggled to wrap my mind around.
Yeah, I was trying to. I think it's like nature. Like I think you're right. Like I kind of put the pieces together at the end when Adrian Brody and Jim Caviezel are like in jeopardy. There's like a lot of shots of animals that are randomly like strung in, like bats and shit. And then the closing shot is of like, I guess it's like a coconut that's on the water, but like it's growing a plant out of it. And that, to my mind, I was like, okay, that is probably something that man did. They put that there, but it's like the fact that nature will still continue no matter what. And that's basically like, that's all this is like war itself is just part of nature. And these people will continue to live on. And that's why everyone in the movie kind of cycles out. Like it really doesn't matter who the main character is because guys are just coming and they're going. Now, that's what I'm saying. I think that's kind of the point, but also it's kind of hard to feel connected to anybody. Like when people are dying, I don't necessarily care because I haven't had a whole lot of time with them. Like when Woody Harrelson's like, I blew my ass off. I think that's kind of funny. I don't think that's supposed to be funny at all, but I haven't had any time with Woody Harrelson at all. And then that's like the one scene with him, and he's like, write my wife for me. And I'm just like, that's kind of humorous. I also wish we got to see his ass, and not in a weird way, but like, it was very obvious that they, didn't show. Like, I wish there was like some practical effects down there and stuff like that, but there wasn't. But.
That's one thing I was never expecting to hear. I wish we saw his ass.
Yeah, you never really know what Stone's gonna say.
That's a moment that should hit really hard because like he throws himself onto that, like to shelter them from the blast after he makes a mistake. Like it should be a very heavy moment, but I feel like there's multiple moments in here where I feel like it's like so overacted and just like a little bit melodramatic, and I'm just like, all right, like this is. I feel like portions of this are like what Tropic Thunder is like making fun of. Like it's just like, all right, this is very, very dramatic. We don't actually have a connection to these characters, but the movie thought it had another 2 hours, so maybe it thought we should.
I genuinely think that I would have loved this movie if it was 2 hours long. And it's funny because I own it. like there's like the scene of like this 19-year-old boy, like a really young guy, doesn't get any lines, and you see him like twice on screen, and then all of a sudden he's dead, and it's like this big moment. And even the Don, I think his name's Dahl, the guy who's in charge of all of them, even says, "You've never held someone, a dying person, in their arms," which is that kid. I didn't know. I guess it's just the fact that he's young is what you're trying to like connect to. Sure, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, Stone, you could probably guess why I hold this a little higher is they get a lot of things accurate. The lingo and everything. The beginning, well, not the beginning scene, but like the first scene where he's kind of in what looks like an interrogation room with Sean Penn. He calls him Top, which is like slang in the military for first sergeant in the Army and master sergeant in the Marine Corps. Like, I like that aspect of everything, which is why I think I hold it a little higher than you guys. And I think for the most part, I think this movie looks really good. I could definitely see this moving to like a 5 out of 5 if it was 5 hours long.
Yeah, it seems like they're really trying to show off the landscape, which I mean,
Yeah.
it was the nature theme too. That I'm like, thinking that what they were trying to go for makes sense with that. Well, I mean, it's beautiful where they're at, which is kind of the point of the movie. Like you said, I'm frustrated because I see it, but it was just the editing like felt so off to me, and I couldn't get over it. Like we were talking about, there's that one scene where, like you're saying, the natives is like where they really do the full on attack, and they're in that fog. And I couldn't get over, they're like creeping around in that fog, and there's some shots that go off. And then all of a sudden they're like charged kind of in a way. And the lighting drastically changes. It's like kind of like not nighttime, but it's like 5 a.m. And then when they go, it's like 1 p.m. Like it's bright daylight. And I couldn't get over the fact that that slight lighting change. I'm like, what happened there? Why is it like that?
Yeah. I actually have a very similar gripe like that in 13 Hours.
It's just, that makes sense. Cut to Pieces makes sense. It really does. And I cannot believe Adrian Brody. I wouldn't have guessed him. Out of like 6 guesses, I wouldn't have guessed him.
If you go back and just look at the cast, it's about who you don't see and whose scenes were cut down by like 90%. You're like, wait, this person was in this movie. You'll be amazed if you just go to IMDb and look at the stories behind it. You're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
And with how much they like flash between characters, I might have missed him. But was George Clooney just in it for like the last like 5 minutes?
Yeah, that was it.
Which is just like a wild.
He's the new commanding officer. I think that comes in.
Okay.
Travolta's only in it for like a scene or two or whatever.
Yeah. Also, hot take. I'm not a big fan of him.
I'll say I wanted to talk about that. Like with this movie came out in 1998, so everyone who's in this is not as maybe famous as they were back then. But I also feel like that's such distraction. But I also think like showing Clooney at the end is really not necessary, in my opinion. Like to have a huge actor like that, because I know he was big in 1998.
He was just starting to be big. Like he just
really okay. See, anybody who watches this now, that's like the one thing they say is like, I guess they just got lucky with the cast they had, which is true because Jared Leto wasn't that big, and John Cusack, and I mean Woody Harrelson. And one thing I want to mention too, I did not think that John C. Reilly was John C. Reilly because his voice does not sound the same like it sounds now. I don't know what happened to him. Like he has a very distinguishable voice now, very unique. He sounds like a normal dude. I'm not trying to bash him. He sounds like a normal dude in this, and I did not think it was him because of that. But then I looked it up. I was like, that was John C. Reilly.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. I think Three Kings was a year after this for Clooney. Which I like that movie a lot. But yeah, this is very interesting. I'm happy I watched it. I will come back to it and try to like it more. I will say it's a beautiful movie. I mean, they shot this in Australia. It does have a very authentic feel to it, and I liked the opening a lot. Like I kind of wanted to see more time with those people. I don't know if it was. I think they're like just Melanesian people. I don't know exactly where they were, but I would have liked to see a little more of that. I also thought it was kind of funny how the scene where they first actually land on the beach. I feel like there's an expectation of there's going to be conflict as soon as they land. I think it's kind of a funny subversion that they just kind of walk onto the beach and then just walk for miles and there's just no contact with anyone. And I do like that sequence on the hill. It is very fucking long, man. It's a lot of time just in tall grass crawling around. And I think it's kind of funny, like they'll stand up and literally as they stand up, artillery is just everywhere immediately as if like I thought that was kind of funny. Like the artillery is literally as soon as they begin to move, it's just there. It does feel like maybe there were bits and pieces pulled out of that as well, but it's a long sequence. But yeah, I don't know. This was really up and down for me.
Yeah, like the fact that they have like 10, I think it's like 10 days off or something like that. like you don't. I guess it's part of the structure or part of the editing. Like you don't feel like they have 10 days off. It's like okay, they're finally relaxing, and then there's like right back in it, but it doesn't feel like that length of time. But then also, was that because they cut stuff out of the movie, or was that done on purpose? Like that's how it might feel when you're in war. And I was like, shit, they're already done with it. They're going back out. Jim Caviezel's dead. So,
yeah. Any closing thoughts on this, guys?
Go ahead.
I hope that my DVD has the deleted scenes. That's what I'll say.
Deleted movie.
Stone and
Probably
Dan.
2 deleted movies in there. Yeah.
Stone and Dan, I might have missed it, but would you guys rate this?
I have a 2.5.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't lie and say like, man, like it's just like I see what's trying to happen, but it just didn't connect with me. That's the thing.
That's fair.
Yeah, I had it at a 3. And like in moments it fluctuates from like 2.5 to like a 3.5. Like, I don't know. Some of it I really like, some of it I'm just like I just don't care. But I don't know. I'm never gonna just like pretend to like something because everyone says it's good. It didn't connect with me.
Well, one film that we probably all like. I don't know about Connor because this was Connor's first time watching it. But we can talk about Starship Troopers.
That'll be funny.
James, you want to talk
I
about
have
this?
this rated at a half star.
I said this was your recommendation, man. You can go ahead and talk about this plot if you want.
So what is Starship Troopers about? Well, it basically takes place in like the 23rd century, and like humankind's in this like fascistic, authoritarian military world where like there's a difference between citizens and civilians, but not what we're used to here. So like if you want to be a citizen of the Federation, you have to have served in the military. Everybody didn't is like relegated to basic civilian. Instead of like veteran, you're called a citizen at that point. And we're at war with these giant bugs and everything like that. So this movie came out in 1997, and I'm 11 years old when this movie comes out. So the trailer looks fantastic. We're going to go over these bugs, and you love this movie, and I've got the same tattoo that they have in the movie, so it's all great like that. But then, like, when you're watching the movie as a kid, you're like, this is a fantastic, like, just sci-fi blast of killing bugs. But when you grow up and you watch it later on, you kind of see what Paul Verhoeven was getting at, because he grew up in Nazi-occupied, like, the Netherlands and everything like that, and you can see how he was trying to, show you what it was like growing up like that for him. And, like, in the movie, all these people are from Buenos Aires, and they're like the whitest people in the world. So it's also like a thing where like, hey, the Nazis escaped from Germany and went to Argentina and kind of set up this like whole world there. And like that was something I never noticed when I was younger until I grew up and watched it. But like the fact that they're afraid of the bugs, and like they're going to these planets, and like how are the bugs, like we could just wipe them out. We could blow up the whole planet if we wanted to. But like inside the movie, there's like Mormons that set up like forts in like the bug quarantine zone. Like why would you be doing that? And it's like, would you like to know more?
So
and that's
funny.
one of, like, I started my own TikTok series called "Would You Like to Know More?" and we just talk about like movie facts and stuff like that. But like that it's just so funny inside the movie when you grow up and you're not a kid watching it. You see all these other things you missed at that time. But I love all sci-fi war movies. So
I think what I love about this, Jimmy, is like it works, like you said, from a like kid's point of view, where like you just want to be entertained and you want to see, the movie looks pretty good and there's some genuinely solid action and good combat and it's fun, but then you can watch it from a completely different perspective and understand the satire. And like, but I love when satire still works as like what it's satirizing, or like as an entertaining story, but then it still has just another lens you can watch it through. I think that's awesome. I think this is like one of the best examples of that. I love this movie so much.
Connor, what'd you think?
I had a great time with it. Every time they said Battle Station Ticonderoga, I laughed. I think my favorite part of the movie is Denise Richards.
that's fair.
For obvious reasons.
Not Dina Meyer. Come on.
There was a theory that they chose like super. It's funny because they're movie stars, so they are actors. But there's like a theory that they chose like supermodel looking people to play in this movie to help out the military even more. Like, look how fucking sick these people look. It's because it's part of the military.
Yeah. What do you guys kind of think about these characters? Like, what? And maybe Jimmy, like to start. Like, what's your take on these characters? Like, how do you feel about them? What do you see them as? Like, what's your view?
So like it's weird, like when you're watching it, like you can get two different views of it from a kid's point and as an adult point. Like when you're younger, you're sympathizing with Rico, like he wants to follow his girlfriend, but like not necessarily go to war, but like join the mobile infantry just so he can like, be like, a badass and impressive to her. But then war happens, and then what do you do? And then like he becomes an entirely different person from the beginning of the movie to the middle of the movie to the end of the movie, where he's like in charge of all these people. But like it also shows like the chaos of like actual combat, where like your senior officers getting picked off, and like now all of a sudden Ace Levy, who's played by Jake Busey, is in charge, and he has no idea what to do. And then there's a huge slaughter on Clondathdu, and like you think everybody's dead, but you don't know who's dead, and everything like that. But like also it's a very militaristic society, and like the training scenes, like going back to Full Metal Jacket, like there's some brutal shit that Clancy Brown's doing to these people. He's throwing knives at you, smashing your arm in half. But like I don't know. Also, like why is there a live fire exercise happening where you can get shot and blow somebody's face off? Like when Breckenridge's face explodes, I pause it on that time because the practical effects they use are so funny, and you can just see where it's like a fake head that explodes and everything like that.
It's like the same thing in Jarhead.
Yeah. I'm just thinking like live fire exercise. This guy just got would that helmet really have saved his head from exploding? Like I'm just wondering that.
Well, I feel like that's just like, to me, that's so fucking funny as like satire, because they're just like ridiculously stupid and so like it's just everything is so exaggerated, and like the fact that they would be doing that, and this guy just like point blank gets like executed by the person. Like it's so silly, but like it just is really funny to me. Yeah.
Even the administrative punishment scenes with the whipping and stuff like that. Could you imagine that happening like now? But like,
yeah.
Clancy Brown might be my favorite part of this movie, or like favorite character in this movie.
I always think about the fact that he plays Mr. Krabs. I know he's the voice of Mr. Krabs. That's like the one thing I think about when I think about Clancy Brown. He's a very underrated actor, but that's the one thing I think about. I was gonna say with characters, I feel like one that I found really interesting, I find really interesting is Carmen, because I guess there was a deleted scene where they explain this, but it's kind of hinted at in the movie, in the final product, is that it's kind of looked down upon to be in a relationship. And because there might be a possibility that being in a relationship could steer you away from serving your nation.
Yeah.
And that kind of makes sense when it comes to Rico's parents, because I don't think Rico's parents are citizens. They look like they don't like the military. So in a way, they probably didn't serve, so they're probably not. And makes sense. They're in a relationship. They didn't serve their country. So there's an example right there. But the fact that Carmen kind of fits into this 21st century mindset, which is a good mindset of, female empowerment. Like, I'm going to take control. I'm not going to be in this relationship, right? I'm going to go off and I'm going to start a career. But in a sense, she is selling herself to a corporation to be used for their personal gain, for propaganda. So I feel like that's really interesting, that female empowerment, of course, is such a great thing, but the fact that how it can be manipulated in a way.
I feel like she's just not a very good person. I don't know. I think that's her main issue. Like, I think you see throughout the course of the movie, like, she's very, like, she's not a good person. I think she kind of keeps Johnny on a string a little bit, and kind of will let him get a little farther away and then be like kind of pull him back in. I don't think she ever really necessarily has any intention of like being with him in the long run. But
no, I think that's the deleted scene, is like her and him like talking about their relationship, and she's like, no, because she's more career minded than he is. So she's like, I really don't think we should do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like fun and comfortable, and she likes him, but he's kind of like just in over his head with her. But I think you were talking about Johnny and kind of his evolution over the course of the movie. I think it's so well done. I think it's such a good performance because you can really kind of break it into thirds. But I think I feel for him maybe more than other people might, because the moment that really swings things for him is when they are attacked by that asteroid, which I think is so fucking funny that these people think these bugs were able to send an asteroid, and it literally shows you the galaxy and how ridiculous and small-minded you have to be to actually think that's what happened, and it wasn't just chance. But there's this attack, and then it's just turned into propaganda, and it's used. And you can look throughout history as that happening. I mean, the Germans set the Reichstag on fire and then blamed it on the Jews, and then said, that's happened over and over and over again. Not that Earth set that up themselves, but just it was an act of nature. But I feel like Johnny gets like kind of radicalized by that, and he loses his family. And at that point, what else does he have? Like, he turns back to the military and he wants to get revenge because he genuinely thinks like he lost his parents to these bugs and his entire city. So I think you can understand kind of his evolution and how he hardens, and I think you can have empathy for him as like a cog in a wheel that just doesn't necessarily know he's a cog because he's just not that intelligent, which I think is also made clear. So
news reports are so Fox Newsworthy, like with shot out of the space by bug plasma, and it's like the only good bug is a dead bug. Like it's basically a Trump campaign ad at that point too. They're like he's for you, she's for they them. Like the only good bug is a dead bug. I mean, that's more like what they're going for. But like we would have known that 27 years ago and everything like that. But like also Dizzy has a line like after they find out what happened, he's like, the goddamn bugs whacked us, Johnny. Like really, the bugs did that. Like you're gonna like they're just sending these and you guys didn't know it was coming. Like you don't have like interplanetary defense.
Well, that's the thing. They show one at the beginning, right? And don't they shoot it with a turret?
Yeah.
Like there's a meteor. What happened? Where's the second time? Where did that go?
I think the movie is way more interesting if that strike was allowed to happen. I think it makes more sense and is more interesting. And I think you're telling me this society, like you just said, wouldn't have the knowledge that was coming or wouldn't have the capability to destroy it. I don't believe it. But once that happens, you then get to say, let's go attack them. They hit us. Let's go do it to them. So I think that's really interesting. And also just the Neil Patrick Harris storyline with like the psychics and the very thinly
veiled. In fact, they look like Germans.
Oh, it's the SS. I mean, it's
yes.
Yeah, it's definitely SS.
But he really is kind of terrible, and it's funny because you see kind of little hints of what his character, as in quality of person, is actually like at the beginning of the movie, and then just seeing what he turns into, is wild. I kind of like Diz is a little bit. She is a little bit Nazi-ish. I'm not gonna lie, but I feel like I like her way better than Carmen.
She actually cares about Rico, and you could 100% see that.
Yeah,
and also her death, wild. Was not expecting that.
Yeah.
Also, she's fine as hell. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think Diz is much better looking than Carmen.
I also agree.
I mean, Denise Richards has aged well.
Yeah.
Watch Blue Mountain State.
How do you feel about Johnny Stone?
I mean, it's difficult. Like you said, you kind of feel for him and feel like he's just a wheel in the system that's been just. I feel like he's like what I turned into him if I was put in this situation. I don't know. Like I think it's the whole fact that society has told him that this is what he has to do, and the fact that if he can't be with Carmen, might as well kind of join the military. And because what is life on Earth if you don't have a significant other, or the one that because his parents seem comfortable, but they also have each other. So if he doesn't have her, the one that he wants, you get into the military, and then once you're in there, like the movie is perfectly structured with the fact, like I think the director even said this. He perfectly wanted it that halfway through the first half of the movie is like, hoorah, like this is fucking cool kind of a thing, and then the second half is just devastation.
Full Metal Jacket.
Exactly. So. I mean, I feel bad for him. I really do. And also, I would say when you were talking about like, what do you think about the characters? I think it's also really smartly set up that everyone who's like helping the military, like all the teachers, and also I think there's a guy at the recruiting desk. They all are still part of the military and have got hurt. Like all of them have like some type of injury.
Yeah.
And they're still part of the wheel and still helping people. Like, even though I'm hurt, go on out. Like,
Jimmy, what were you going to say?
So I have this movie memorized. I can do every line. I don't want to. But he basically says, he's like, when he tells him he picked mobile infantry, he's like, good for you. Mobile infantry made me the man I am today.
Yeah.
He's got no legs,
Shows you the
one arm. And he's like, and he's just looking at him, he's like, I guess. But like, also like, they point out like Rico's like a dumb jock, right? But they pull up like his final like math scores and everything like that in front of everybody. And it's like his girlfriend's going to the Fleet Academy. His best friend's got games and theory. He's going to be military intelligence. Like, what the hell do I have to do? It's like, I guess I'm just going to go be a grunt and do what I have to do at that point, which is infantry and basically killing something.
Yeah.
So what's the other option? Like, if he didn't join the military, I guess there is no other option, kind of.
Well, I mean, his dad's yelling at him to go to Harvard. He's like, you're going to go to Harvard, and that's the end of it. He's like, I am not going to Harvard, and I'm not going on vacation. And it's like this rebellious teenager thing and everything like that.
Yeah, but it's funny because he's rebelling against like the most fucking ridiculous privilege shit. Like, they're like, oh, John, you like go on vacation. He's like, I'm not going to go on vacation. I'm going to go join the military. It's just like so ridiculous. But what you guys were just talking about with education, I think it kind of addresses that, because there's that one scene, they're all standing around kind of talking about why they're there. Nobody is there to actually serve. Like, nobody actually, I think in their mind, actually wants to do what they're doing. They're just like, education is really expensive, so I'm going to use like, the GI Bill in this world to go to school after this. They go around to like 5 different people and all have a different reason why. And it's all kind of based around improving their life or being able to have access to citizenship and doing what they want to do. But no one's like, no, I'm here to serve,
The only person that says that is Ace, and it's said in such a dumb way. He's like, I'm going career. And the guy's like, oh, future Sky Marshal. And he's like, yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going career.
Yeah. Which is funny because a lot of the people I met at boot camp all were like, oh, free college. Like, there was our platoon when we first started boot camp was 110 people. And I think like 20 of them were Puerto Ricans trying to get their like citizenship. Like, so it's a real thing.
Yeah, and a lot of times when you look at where recruiters go, they go to low-income places where people don't have options. And it's presented to you that, if you give your time, you can get out, go to school, etc. Have like, I think that's happened throughout history. So I think that's kind of portrayed really well. The book I haven't read the book. I'd like to. I think it's interesting. The book was written in 1959. It was very, very, very much ahead of its time. But I think when you look at the mindset in this movie and how it can be applied directly to Vietnam and then Iraq and then Afghanistan, I think the underestimation of the enemy and just kind of the, demonization of them, and I think it fits perfectly. And that's why when I was talking about, I think The Thin Red Line would be an amazing Vietnam movie, it's because a lot of that stuff applies where you actually just had people, we had no business being there. And there were a lot of people that were literally just defending their home. And, the same thing in Iraq and Afghanistan, there were absolutely extremists and stuff we were fighting, but there were also people there that were probably just like, why the fuck are you here? I don't want you to be here. Like, it's understandable. But I think
the book is much different than the movie. Like, when you read the book, you're gonna be like, oh, this isn't what I thought at all. And like, you saw the one TikTok I made where someone was like, Starship Troopers isn't a book, it's a movie. And I literally like face palm myself like this. I don't know how to answer this question, but like, also like there's Starship Troopers has 2 sequels, and the second one is terrible. And the third one is somewhat watchable, but the third one definitely leans more into authoritarian fashions, because like the Sky Marshal in that movie like sings songs and like he dances and he has his own like CDs that they put out and everything like that to like propagate. And one of the songs is Addictive Hell. If you ever hear it, you're gonna be like, it's a good day to die. And they really lean more into that aspect of it. But like when Verhoeven made this movie, they gave him a choice. So like in the book Starship Troopers, they're in like these big mechanical marauder suits that they call them. They're like, we can give you the giant military suits, or we can give you the crazy looking, insane CGI practical effects bugs. He's like, give me the bugs. Forget the suits. We'll do that later on. So like when you see Starship Troopers 3 Marauder, there's these giant suits. You're like, oh, I guess that's what it was supposed to look like, but they didn't do it that way.
Oh, Casper Van Dien came back for the third one.
Yes. He comes back for the third one, and he does the animated stuff. He's obsessed with playing Johnny Rico. I thought he was going to be the huge thing going forward, and then like it just never happened. Like he was in Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow, and he got cut in half in like an hour, just like sliced in half on the bridge. But his daughter, I think, is fairly famous. She was in something I saw, Grace Van Dien. She was in something I saw recently. I can't remember what it was, but I know she was in. Oh, she's in Stranger Things. She played Chrissy, that cheerleader. Chrissy, wake up!
I haven't seen an episode.
Yeah.
What can I ask quickly? What else do you see as like the primary differences between the book and the movie? Like, is it like thematic differences, or just the story itself, or
story itself and the character? So, like in the book, the character's name is Juan Rico. Like that's a big thing. But like that's also why I'm saying Paul Verhoeven put white people in Buenos Aires to just make it Johnny Rico and everything like that. And like it's not as satirical and authoritarianism in the book. Like Verhoeven changed that to give it like basically his perception of what World War II was like for him. Like it's still militaristic, but it's not as in your face as the movie is.
Yeah, I heard that the author served in the Navy, I believe, and then he put the military in charge, not necessarily as in like fascism. Like he more put them in charge to see like what society could be like if everyone had the same mindset. He didn't mean it to be like what Starship Troopers became, basically. But
he
yeah,
wasn't
I think
even allowed to see the movie at that point either. So
I wonder what he would have thought.
But like Starship Troopers, the book really heavily influenced James Cameron's Aliens. Like that's where he got a lot of his like militaristic ideas to like turn that sci-fi series into a war movie, basically at that point.
And definitely this movie takes from Aliens.
Yeah,
1,000%.
Even Cameron borrowed from Starship Troopers. Starship Troopers borrows from Alien.
Yeah, we did an episode about that, and I talked about how Cameron gave everyone copies of the fucking book on the set of Aliens and said, "Read this to the Marines. This is what you're doing." Which I really like Aliens as well. I also think it's funny. This movie is so on the nose, but even like that like Federation logo, and when they're giving those speeches with the flag behind it, it's like literally just the German eagle from like the right. It's the same exact thing. It's not.
I'm sorry. I'm just thinking of the scene where all the kids are like touching the guns, like
Guns.
woo.
Yeah, I mean it's literally.
Oh, and just the fact that they like it's so convenient to like hate an enemy when they look like something you're familiar with too. It's like, are the bugs actually evil? Like just because they look a certain way, automatically you have this, this bias towards them. You're like, we have to kill them, kind of a thing. Where you don't necessarily know. Like I think someone said there's even like a scene where they're dying in this big explosion. You can hear them, like one of them screaming, and it kind of sounds like a human woman.
Yeah,
and
the
it's
nuke
like,
goes off.
Yeah, it's just like, and
when
the brain thing too.
The planet, yeah.
But it's also
like,
go ahead, Jimmy.
So like I said, this movie has 2 sequels, and in this one, you're just like, in the third one, you get more of an idea. Like they go more into like the bug hierarchy and like how they're actually like super intelligent, and the brain bug was just a plant to like sabotage you from the inside. But like in this movie, you wouldn't know that. But they do expand on it in later movies that like nobody else has seen, probably but me.
I was gonna say, it also is laid out that like basically we came into conflict with them because we expanded into their space. Like it was our own like imperialism that caused it, and then it's like, oh, they're actually the villains. It's really, really good.
Why are Mormons setting up forts inside the arachnid quarantines? Like Fort Joseph Smith, and all these people are just like slaughtered. Like, what did you think was going to happen?
Are the sequels good?
The second one is horrendous. The third one is highly watchable because of how funny and satirical it is, especially with the Sky Marshal, who's a psychic that has his own CDs that he releases, and like everyone sings along. It's more or less a Trump rally where he's doing the dancing like this and everything like that, except it's more choreographed at that point. But the third one is called Starship Troopers 3 Marauder, and it's good. And they do some like animated CGI ones that are like Starship Troopers, Traitor of Mars, that are interesting. And Casper Van Dien comes back for I think all of them but the second movie. But there's a scene in Starship Troopers like when Johnny wants to re-enlist after he leaves, and like Dean Norris is like the chief of the base, like Hank Schrader from Breaking Bad and everything like that. And he's like, and he tears it up, and like the way he says, "Yes, sir," and he stands up, and it's so every time I see it, I laugh.
I was gonna say because I looked at it. Sorry, I was looking at Starship Troopers 2, and it looks like the nickname for it is Starship Poopers. So I was like, it doesn't sound like it's pretty good.
I think it's called like Heroes of the Federation, but it's so bad. Like Richard Burgi is the main star of that movie, and like you'd know him if you saw him, but I don't know if you would know him just by me saying his name. But he's like the main character of that movie.
I think the Mormon thing is a small detail, but it's so funny, the idea that they'll just try to like go evangelize like anywhere.
Go convert the bugs. That's
literally so fucking funny.
Heretic in space is what Fort Joseph Smith was. They're going to go convert these aliens to be Mormons.
Heretic 2.
Yeah, starring Hugh Grant as the Arachnids.
It was very very interesting. I feel like Mormons are kind of having a moment. It's reading into their history is so fucking insane. Like, I don't know why BYU is still. Brigham Young was a psychopath. Like, Brigham Young went to war with the United States government in Utah. Like, he was a complete degenerate. Like, slaughtered people. He had like 60 wives.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a war.
This
Brigham
is just like
Young
a story
led
I
the war.
don't know anything about.
Yeah, the Utah war, dude. Look it up. They killed like 250 people, like settlers that were going to California. Like, slaughtered them.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was terrible. And he literally said that there couldn't be black priests. He was a huge slavery guy. Brigham Young was terrible, and now he has a fucking university named after him. Like James Vanderbilt, same thing. But
without that university, we don't get Fred Warner. So like,
yeah, that's true. It's just a crazy thing. But I digress.
To go back to Full Metal Jacket, Arlie Ermy actually does have a voice cameo in Starship Troopers. He's like one of the news reporters.
Does he really?
If you go back and listen to it, it's uncredited, but you'll be able to pick out his voice right away.
Oh, this is something I actually wanted to mention on Full Metal Jacket too. Arlie Ermy got out of the Marine Corps as a staff sergeant, and because of all the work he did with like volunteer work and like with the Marine Corps and military and veterans, they actually gave him honorary gunnery sergeant.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Same thing happened with is it Gary Buscemi who played Lieutenant Dan? Not Gary Buscemi.
Gary Sinise.
Gary Sinise. Thank you. Yeah, he also got honorary some rank. I forget what. But yeah.
On the note of the news broadcast, I think one of the funniest things is, I guess it starts out with it and then circles back to it, when the guy is literally like making propaganda in the middle of fucking battle. He just gets skewered by the bug. Like that gets me every time.
I could do the whole scene for you guys, but I won't.
It
is an ugly planet. It's a bug planet. It's a planet. It just gets chopped in half.
Yeah, the bugs are vicious, man. Like this movie looks so good to me. Like I feel like it kind of holds up. I mean,
for 1997 to get $121 million budget for that kind of movie, and like for how they spent all of that money on making the bugs look incredible, because I mean the cast is, some of them are well known, but also like I think Neil Patrick Harris is probably the most famous person in the cast at the time, probably him and Clancy Brown, and that's it.
And this is before we knew that Neil Patrick Harris was a piece of shit.
Yeah. You know what's crazy is that I was just thinking about it. Their propaganda, which is very apparent in political advertisements now, it kind of goes against itself too, because they have this idea that the bugs, are the ones that like send the meteor towards them and cause that devastation. But also they're trying to preach the fact that these bugs aren't intellectual. Yeah, and it's like that doesn't make sense. That doesn't compute. Like you can only have one or the other. You can't do both.
Yeah, there's
make up your mind.
Bugs, but they sent an asteroid across the fucking galaxy to hit with pinpoint accuracy on Earth.
So which one is it?
Only other thing I'll say is, like, do you remember that when they were dissecting the bugs in school, like in the class, and Carmen was, do you know who the science teacher is in that movie?
I know it's Blanche from Golden Girls.
Yeah, it's Rue McClanahan from Golden Girls, but like I didn't know that for 20 years.
Me neither.
I had no idea until someone told me, like, oh, it's Blanche. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. Good movie though. 5 out of 5 or 4.5 for me.
I mean, based on this, it's a 5 for me, but
it's I will not get the thin red line tattoo on me, probably.
Do you have any movie themed tattoos, Stone?
I have a camera right here, like a film camera, and then I also have a dinosaur. So you could say that's Jurassic Park, but I just say it's. I have Avatar: The Last
I was thinking
Airbender.
that museum.
What
I
kind
have
of
Avatar
dinosaur is that, Stone?
T-Rex.
What's your favorite dinosaur?
Velociraptor,
Megalodon.
I guess. I don't know why.
Alan Grant answer.
I feel like you want me to say something.
I'm just
No,
curious.
I'm all about Dan's question because I literally just brought out to my wife not long ago that I'm excited to have kids because now someone in my adult life is going to ask me what my favorite dinosaur is because for some reason that went away.
What's your favorite dinosaur?
Megalodon.
Yo, have you watched the Meg? It's pretty good.
Obviously. Wait, Jimmy, what's yours?
Stegosaurus, man. I want to hit some people with a tail.
Yeah, and on a similar vein, mine's the Ankylosaurus. He's dope. The big club tail, all the spikes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I would say mine might have been Velociraptor until whatever the fuck Jurassic World did, and they made them like pets, and I don't like that.
Velociraptors were not. Velociraptors were just like little birds. They were so
Yeah, they were-
small.
they were-
Like,
Yeah.
They're not.
Look, what? It's funny. Anytime I think of Velociraptors, the first thing that comes to my mind is not Jurassic Park. It's Jurassic Park 3, where it's just he just turns around. He's like Alan, and he just looks like a raptor the whole. Like, why is that? Why is that in there?
So good,
Why is that there?
so
It's
good.
very bizarre.
Someone was like, "I'm gonna eat with this scene," and everybody laughed at it when they saw.
You know, I was actually just reading about that relatively recently. There is an explanation, but it's really fucking dumb. I need to circle back to that now. But it's very stupid.
Dan.
Jimmy, at the end of our episodes, we usually like recommending a movie, either a new release or something in the past that you think people might want to check out that they don't know about. Anything like that you got that you could recommend for us?
So, like I said, I'm really big on like sci-fi horror and stuff like that, especially from like the late '90s. But if you never saw the movie The Relic or The Mimic, so The Relic stars Tom Sizemore as like this cop in Chicago, and like there's all these murders that are happening in this museum, and he's kind of got to investigate, and you find out it's not what you think it is. There's like a giant monster going around this museum, and it's interesting. And also Guillermo del Toro's The Mimic from I think 1998 is a really good sci-fi horror movie that I'm very invested in. And Josh Brolin's in it before he's like super famous, and he dies in like the first like 20 minutes of the movie, and it's super funny just to watch that. But if you've never seen The Mimic, you should definitely watch it.
And it looks like the Mimic is streaming on like. Wait, no. This is a different Mimic, 2017.
Yeah, it's just called Mimic. I think they just say Mimic. But
1997.
Yeah.
Okay, it's on Paramount Plus. Nice. Stone, do you have something?
I can recommend a show. My colors work with it. I would tell everyone to go check out Arcane if they can on Netflix really quick. I mean, it'll be really easy too because the show is ending after this season on purpose too. It's not getting canceled. Like the show is only going to be 2 seasons, and it's the most expensive animated show that's ever existed. So that just like shows the quality that you'll see on display. The animation is just fucking ridiculous. I'm just the biggest fan of animation, and still what's happening is just kind of unbelievable and really blowing me away. But yeah, Arcane, there's only 2 episodes or 2 seasons. There's only 1 season, and then the second season is premiering now weekly. So 3 episodes for the next 3 weeks. Should be kind of a quick watch, but yeah, like I said, I love shows that know when to finish, and this is going to. So big thumbs up for me. But yeah, Arcane, go check it out. It's good. It's like steampunk, magic, sci-fi-ish, like kind of. It's from League of Legends, the game, but you don't need to know shit about League of Legends. I don't know shit about League of Legends.
My recommendation is that nobody watches Gladiator 2.
I've seen it.
That's my recommendation. It's so
gosh. That's a great recommendation.
No, but I mean, I talked about it on TikTok. The Count of Monte Cristo, I think, is the best movie of the year. It comes out in a month. I'm just very excited for people to see it because I think it's just ridiculously good. It is 3 hours long, but like it's 3 hours that just kind of like goes by. It's very, very good. That's my month early recommendation. So
I'm excited that your video about it did well too. I saw that it did pretty
Dude, me too.
pretty decent for a movie review. Yeah.
A lot of people didn't know that it was happening, and a lot of people. I've never even watched the older one that a lot of people love from 2002, so I'd like to watch that. But people seemed excited about it.
Oh yeah, Connor.
I'm gonna go with Heartbreak Ridge. It came out in the 80s. Clint Eastwood directed it and stars in it. Basically, a disgruntled gunnery sergeant who has also won the Medal of Honor. And the military kind of wants to push him out of the military. But once you're above a staff sergeant, which is an E6, it kind of takes an act of Congress to really kick you out of the military. And because he has this Medal of Honor, they like really don't know what to do with him. And so they send him to this recon unit that is just kind of filled with a bunch of like, shitbag Marines who like are just terrible. And he goes there to kind of set them straight and become like one coherent unit.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, I was reading about that because you were thinking about picking that for today, right?
Yeah, I almost picked it, and then I switched to Full Metal Jacket.
Nice.
Thank you for that.
Jimmy, are you seeing the Brutalist today?
No, I am not. And I know they have another one next week, but my son's birthday party is next week, so I won't be able to make that. I'll watch. I'll get a screener for it at some point, but it's like 3.5 hours long or something like that. It's like 217 minutes, right?
Yeah, it's long as shit. I'm bracing for it, but
that's why I didn't see it at the
today?
film festival.
Yeah, 12. Then I'll have to bust ass home for the Eagles-Cowboys game. But
I watched Conclave the other day. That movie was fantastic.
Yeah,
I did not see that coming at all at the end.
We agree on something.
Wait, Dan, you're telling me you weren't upset you're missing Giants-Panthers right now?
Is that happening right now?
That's probably the Panthers are actually winning.
Yeah, it was a 9:30 game in Germany.
I didn't set any of my fans. Hopefully. Okay. I'll deal with that.
How many players of the Giants and Panthers do you have?
Dude, Chuba Hubbard's been excellent this year in fantasy.
All right, fine. But I mean, the Panthers are up 10-0 right now.
He's got 83 yards, man. He's eating.
Nice. I haven't in like 2 weeks. All right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Connor, do you want to say something real quick?
Yeah. No, because I know we're about to close this out. My big thing is there's this whole, wave of doing 22 push-ups a day, for the 22 veterans that take their lives every day. I'm here to tell you, I think that's bullshit. Don't do 22 push-ups. Just call your friends. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, this is, my favorite holiday, the Marine Corps birthday. I literally spend most of this day calling all of my friends. And I should do it more than just today. But I mean, the ones I was super close with, I talk to pretty regularly. Check on your friends. Don't do push-ups and post it to social media. I've been in a bad headspace before. Seeing people do push-ups has done nothing for me. What did was my friends calling and checking on me.
Nice.
Well said.
I low-key thought that you were going to ask because all to do push-ups with you right now. It's going to be like, okay.
No.
Oh, geez. That was a lot better than what I thought you were going to tell us to do. I was like, I had McDonald's before this and a Diet Coke. I'm not feeling the best right now. So, anyways, but Jimmy, thanks for joining us, man. Really cool to meet you. And it's, your reciting of Starship Troopers was great. I wish we had time for more of it. Watch the movie a second time, but please tell everyone where to find you again.
So my name's James Basellam. You guys can call me Jimmy. I run Movie Death Blows. You can find me on X, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook under Movie Death Blows or Movie Death Blow. Dan knows why I have two different TikTok accounts but that Movie Death Blow or Movie Death Blows.
You only have two? I thought you had three.
I do, but I don't ever use the third one. That was just when I started.
Because when Dan talked about you, I looked you up and I followed all three accounts. So
that's fine. I rarely use the third one. It's just in case I get in trouble and the other two get, suspended or banned, which has happened on numerous occasions.
Good to know.
Now I just talk about aliens and I just leave most of the studios alone. So
there you go. But again, I think next week we haven't decided what we're going to talk about next week. But everyone look out for our episode. I was thinking maybe a Thanksgiving Day theme, possibly, because there's not a lot of Thanksgiving movies, but we'll come up with it. But in the meantime, appreciate everyone listening to this episode with us, listening to us talk about our favorite things in the world, movies. But until then, please go outside this week, touch some grass, call your friends, and we'll be back next week. Peace out. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys.